it doesn't work from a clinical standpoint to aim for the mid-normal physiologic range that we would naturally produce. And we have study after study after study to show that. And once again, I need you, myself, and others to take back the word super physiologic to mean healthy and good. Now, don't let you and I be misinterpreted here. We did not say that everybody should just keep driving their testosterone levels up and up and up and up with no end in sight. We did not say that. Dave's already mentioned, and we're going to talk about that now, that there actually is a plateau to the feel-good effects of testosterone. We'll talk about why that occurs. And as David said, my free testosterone's in the 50s, Dave's in the 50s, but men will say all day long, men out there in these forums and everywhere else, mainstream medicine, that you and I don't need a free testosterone of 50. Nobody needs that. No man needs that. That's not true. And Dave and I have tried to explain, we wouldn't have needed it if we produced it ourselves. But when you take it exogenously, it just doesn't work the same. Once again, we're bypassing all of those physiologic events that do have an effect on how we feel and function. And we need higher levels than we were naturally produced in order to get the same effect. That is what we're saying. So look, when it comes to the feel-good effects or symptomatic improvement of testosterone, yes, there's a plateau. There is a point at which raising levels any further will have no effect on symptomatic improvement. And in order to know why that occurs, you really just have to understand two things, two saturation points: the saturation point of the androgen receptor and enzyme saturation. Now, in order for testosterone and its active metabolites to exert its effects, in other words, to make us feel better, it has to bind to their receptors. And there's a limited number of receptors available for binding. And once they're fully saturated, then raising levels of testosterone and its active metabolites any further will have no further effect on how we feel. It'll just be excess. So for instance, you could raise serum DHT and estradiol to a certain point and you can measure it, but it doesn't have any clinical effect because the receptors are fully saturated at a fairly low number, to be quite honest with you. So, you know, the feel-good effects do really come from estradiol predominantly. And with increasing levels of testosterone, you're going to increase levels of its active metabolites, DHT and estradiol. And people think, well, I've got to block my estradiol because it's just going to keep going to the moon. It's just going to, as I raise my testosterone, it's going to keep going up. It can't. It can only reach a point, a plateau. It'll reach a plateau. It's called the Vmax in Michaelis-Menten kinetics. So once again, when it comes to the active metabolites, testosterone has to be converted in the cell to DHT or estradiol. There is a limited number of aromatase enzymes or 5-alpha reductase enzymes. And once those enzymes are fully saturated with free testosterone, you cannot raise DHT and estradiol any further. And they have the feel-good effect. So therefore, you can raise testosterone levels to the tens of thousands. Dallas Carver, in his autopsy, the bodybuilder that died, his level was 66,000 of testosterone. He didn't feel any better than Dave or I do. A man with a level of 5 or 10,000 doesn't feel any better than us. He will have increasing lean muscle mass because it works differently on muscle tissue. You know, the feel-good effects come from the central nervous system. I mean, that's where it comes. And really, there's so much aromatase in the brain. Guys don't understand the harm they're doing when they take an aromatase inhibitor. But nonetheless, once those receptors are fully saturated, keeping on raising testosterone, you can't raise estradiol any further. It will have no further effect. The androgen receptors are also fully saturated. So there is a plateau to feeling good, but there isn't a plateau that we found necessarily in medicine when it comes to increasing lean muscle mass. Testosterone acts directly on muscle tissue. It doesn't act through its active metabolites, estradiol or DHT. So it acts directly as testosterone. With increasing androgen levels, testosterone and anabolic steroids, there's an upregulation of the androgen receptors. So you're going to keep increasing lean muscle mass. That's why they're so big. So we can keep increasing testosterone, increase our lean muscle mass and our strength, but we won't feel any better. So the feel-good effects have a plateau based on the receptor saturation as well as the enzyme saturation. So there's just a plateau. So Dave and I are not saying raise your levels to 5, 10, 15,000. No, we're not saying that at all.